Hare Krishna. Welcome to the 14th and final class of this first canto Srimad Bhagavatam study. We're going to, Krishna willing, complete this canto. That doesn't mean we can't go back and read it again. We will. But we're going to read the 18th and 19th chapters, in which is described the nature of the curse, how Maharaj Parikshit was cursed, what the nature of it was, and how he reacted to it. And his meeting with Shukadeva Goswami, his guru. And to begin, we'll start off auspiciously by having some kirtan.
Haribol. Haribol, sweet soul. Take a clearing breath. Inhale through your nose, fill up, sip it in, sip it in. Exhale, let it go. Our opening prayers. Inhale. Om Jnananandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Vasare Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Govinda ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki, Vermont Bhakti Sangha and beyond ki, Shastra Study Group ki, Gora Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Om Jnanatimirantasya Jnananjana Shrakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Jai. All right. So we have 2 chapters to read, and hopefully we'll finish with enough time that we can take reflections on anything from the canto. But we'll start with reflections on whatever you read most recently, whatever is in your heart now. Whatever you read, whatever you heard.
Okay, so I'll start off once again. Those pregnant pauses get to me. I can't get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of the things I've just been thinking about, just because I had read, sorry, my dog is bothering me, which is okay, but is that, we're in the age of Kali, and what we have is Dharma standing on one leg of truthfulness, and it's really important to do our best with that, and which is the importance of us studying and coming to understand our position relative to Krishna and etc. But even in all that study and all that's what's written there, there's still so much quarrel and confusion over what the text means, and and I'm thinking about not allowing women to be diksha gurus. It's stuff everybody just seems to want to make something out of nothing almost, that there's a,
Sure.
it's just, and we really need to, I mean, so at some point, and not in my lifetime, maybe in my next or the thousandth lifetime, help to bolster that bull with the other three legs so that we enter into a golden age. But it's pretty crazy. Thanks.
Yeah. Thankfully, the philosophy is self-luminous. If you actually have a desire to understand it, and you put yourself in front of teachers who also have a desire to be transparent with it, then it's no amount of darkness can stand in the presence of light. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I have come to re-explain this because in due course of time it appears to have been lost. But that's just the nature of the material world. When Bhaktivinoda Thakur rejuvenated the line of Lord Chaitanya, there were a number of apasiddhantic, what's called like apasiddhanta ideas, means deviant ideas. The idea of this or that. There's like 11 or something primary ones. And he had to dig deep to what Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said and all the associates of Lord Chaitanya and the 6 Goswamis to be like, okay, this is the clear channel. And this is why that doesn't make sense. This is why that doesn't make sense. And so it's entirely possible to have any misgivings or doubts answered, but it's not really possible to expect to live in a world where there aren't going to be misunderstandings for any number of reasons.
Even within the bhakti community.
Yeah.
Like her point.
Even within the bhakti community. Generally, what we find is that when sincere devotees have a difference of opinion, it's due to different levels of prioritizing different kinds of things that are all still spiritual principles. They're not like they're not exactly material reasons. They're reasons that have to do with the differences of opinion on priorities within the spiritual context. Because nobody can say that women can't be gurus because they already are in so many ways. it's just a question of like, well, what's more important, social organization or like outreach, or it's just different things like that. You'll have different people with different points of view, but um, yeah, you get your fair share of that, and that's okay. That's okay. You just gotta align yourself with well, you gotta make sure you hear very clearly and make no misunderstandings about the philosophy as it is. Um, you know, anybody who has any doubts can read what Krishna says in the ninth chapter, that anybody, Shudras, women, merchants, can come to me and become completely purified. Our philosophy is crystal clear on the matter, um, and speak the truth very plainly. But yeah, it's it's yeah, they kind of speaks to like the question I think that maybe Eileen or somebody asked me last time, where it's like, how do you react to controversy or differences of opinion? Or it's like, yeah, well, make sure that you ask Krishna for the truth and you don't let yourself ask for anything less, and then make sure you speak it very plainly, and that's enough. And then all the other stuff is coming and going. Yeah, thank you.
Mary was going to share.
Mary was going to share. I saw that.
Well, here I am. In this age of Kali, it's chaotic, right? So it gets back, and I mentioned this, I think, months ago, and I don't know which particular book we were studying, but it always brings me back to the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy, going home. And going home is being with Krishna. So no
Mhm.
matter how messed up the world may seem, you got to keep centered, you know. And I thought about, I don't know which one it was, chapter 16, maybe, the one about Lakshmi, how she left her little abode, excuse me, in the forest to be at the lotus feet of the Lord. And, it's trying to really, really, really mean that surrender. Surrender by chanting the name, by doing Shastra, by getting together with like-minded people. And even though our homelands and can be a mess, there's always been messes. It's just, you
Always.
know,
The whole the whole
always
the whole Bhagavatam is about that. Like devotees go through so
right.
much. If you were there for the Krishna book, and I know you were, the Krishna book
Yeah.
readings, it begins with Mother Earth saying, "I can't take it anymore. There's so much chaos and violence. Please, Brahma, you got to help me." And Brahma says, "I can't even help you. I'll take it to the big guy." And he prays to the super soul, to Krishna. Krishna says, "I'm coming." And so, as he makes it very clear in the fourth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya sadhanam vinashaya dushkritam, I come to protect the devotees and to annihilate, by liberating, those who are creating problems and to reestablish Dharma. It's always been there. And while Krishna side by side is stealing butter and dancing with his girlfriends and playing tag, he's also like liberating this demon and killing that demon and sending this demon back to Godhead. And it's like over and over. And Kamsa, what was Kamsa doing? Kamsa had a whole little empire thing going on. And he was like sending demons to Mathura to kill the firstborn. Like, how demoniac is that? Think about that for a second. He was sending
Awful.
people out to kill the firstborn, everybody who's like, you know what? Any child who was born in the last this many days, I want him dead. How about that, guys? Can you go kill all of them? This isn't mythology. This happened. The devotees have to live through that, They see all this and they're always like, Krishna, help. Even the gopis in Vrindavan, they're like, oh, the mountains, like, you have to protect us. Like, this all just rain is going to kill everybody. Krishna, help. And that's life. That's life. You just got to like, and it actually works. If you actually just take shelter of Krishna, you're following the footsteps of every other devotee who's been doing the same thing. It's not new. The trick is like the idea that, oh no, now for the first time, it's like, now it's chaotic. So it's always been like this. It's
It's
always
always
been
been
like,
a mess. You
always
know,
been like this.
it's always been a mess. It's just
And
how you
Krishna is
ride
always
the
available.
waves. Thank, thank Krishna for that.
Yeah. Somebody's always got their finger on the trigger, ready to press down, and Krishna is always in charge. Krishna is always there. There's never been a time when he's not. So, welcome to the exciting life of taking shelter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. thanks to Prabhupada.
I was going to say, I think Canto 1 is like an interesting, when you zoom out on it, I think it's really interesting to see like, here is like pre-Kali Yuga and how religion, however we want to define religion, or at least God consciousness and governing, right? And how you rule a country, et cetera, is like intertwined. And interestingly, like Kali Yuga, it's like separation of church and state is like the motto, right? Even though in God we trust is on our money, like, which I think is just very humorous. Um, you know, all, so much of the world is about keeping religion and keeping government like very much apart for lots of reasons. And I think it's just interesting to kind of see it like in its perfection and then see like how far we're getting away from that. And we've had this like beautiful glimpse of what it looks like when done right. And then the degradation of that as we enter into the age of Kali. And then the second thing, kind of unrelated, maybe I think Laura may have said something along the lines in the past few weeks about this, but like just, really thinking about being a vegetarian and how like when you look at the principles of like what we pledge, in initiation, like how integral they are to why the world acts in the way they do. And when you just think about vegetarianism and the violence against animals, and we have this violence against, these the cow and the bull in this, and whether it's more mystical or it's literal, just the idea of like taking these life forms and abusing them and mistreating them has bled into a lot of these faults that we have in society. And I just think it's just really interesting to watch that play out in Canto 1.
Yeah. Maybe we can't separate how we treat each other from what our society looks like. It's a fallacy to think that we can. It's actually like the philosophy is very personal. We're experiencing the results. Karma is an expression of experiencing the results of the energy we put out in the world, the energy of like callousness or viciousness or exploitation or insensitivity or impersonalism. And those are the kinds of things that allow violence to happen, and those are the kinds of things that allow it to come back to anybody. And by the same token, dedication and kindness and reintegration and seeing ourselves and everyone connected to source is what allows there to be peace. There isn't any other way, because Bhagavad Gita 5:29 explains that peace is possible when we can actually be connected to source and function that way. It's a famous peace formula, verse 5:29. And all manner of problems take their root cause in the absence of such consciousness. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, and as far as the separation of church and state, generally we see the historical reasons for that are due to the the existence of spirituality, so-called spirituality, in the modes of nature, just being like corrupted in different ways. Actual spiritual realization, spiritual culture is universal and is insectarian and is good for everybody. And interestingly, as we read in the first canto, even spiritual cultures such as Dvarka allowed for persons of different kinds of backgrounds. The different prostitutes were gathered to greet Krishna, and Prabhupada gave a lengthy purport about how there's all kinds of different people in different walks of life, even in a city like Dvarka, where Krishna and his family lived. And everybody is taught spiritual principles, but nobody's putting a gun to their head and saying you have to follow in exactly this way. There's just like, not everybody's a Brahmin. Everyone follows to the best of their ability. And but there was never any compromise on truth. So we can create spiritual culture in the middle of Kali Yuga without difficulty, right? It doesn't matter if somebody next to us or down the street isn't following. We're blessed to follow. We can follow it just fine by the mercy of the Guru Parampara, and it works. Thank you.
Tanya have a reflection? She had a lot in the chat that she reflected.
I was going to keep quiet since I blew up the phone. over the weekend. I took 2 days off of work so I could catch up because as you were speeding through the chapters, I was getting further and further behind.
Yeah, I know.
So I spent the
Thank you for that.
weekend reading 300 pages of this. But what I will say is that it
Way
was
to go.
interesting. What's that?
Way to go.
Oh, thanks. What I what I find interesting, and it's really simple, is that in chapter 17, um, when they were talking about the four principles of irreligion, gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter, those are the four vows that you make for
Right.
initiation.
To avoid.
Yes, exactly. And I was just, as Eileen was talking about that, that's kind of what came to mind is that those are the four principles of your religion, and that's why we're, anybody that's initiating is making those vows.
Yeah, and the essence of all spiritual life, as we've said many times, is to remember Krishna and never forget him. And all the other rules and regulations are servants of those two things. Those are your do's and don'ts. Do remember him and don't forget him. And so all the positives that we do, like associate with devotees, do chant, do hear spiritual literature, do offer your food, do take prasadam, do worship the deity, go to holy places, all these things, they support remembering Krishna. If you chant Hare Krishna, it'll help you remember Krishna. If you go to spiritual locations, associate with devotees, it'll help you remember Krishna. That's the positive. And all the negatives that we avoid, because those things allow for forgetfulness, right? Like I've seen in the last few years how sports gambling has become such a completely normal thing on such a massive scale. And it's even persons who are not spiritually inclined at all have a lot of problems with that because it creates massive problems in society. It's very predatory. And then, think like it was maybe Eileen just a minute ago talked about like the consequence of violence in society and how we treat animals. It comes back to us whether we believe in that or not. The universe is aligned in such a way. You can't drop something and have it not hit the ground underneath. It's just gravity. So similarly, karma is also a law. If you're violent to other living entities, you must face violence, et cetera, et cetera. These are things that they cloud the mind, they pollute the body, they create distraction, they shorten the quality of and quantity of life, and they distract and create a sense of separation from source, and that's not helpful at all. And so avoiding those things gives you little guardrails so that you're like, even if I'm not like actively remembering Krishna that well, at least I'm not actively forgetting him. So that's why those things are there, is to protect us. They're the regulative principles of freedom. We're trying to be free from the consequences of, intoxication and meat eating and all these frankly useless activities that are very popular right now. They're just kind of like flavors of the month, Baskin Robbins flavors of the month. They're the Kali Yuga flavors of the era. And, we're just really good at creating distraction. And bhakti is all about like, well, hold on, what if reality is so beautiful and I'm just creating a substandard fake reality and getting addicted to that? What if actually reality was worth being attentive to? What if I actually could be attentive to that? Wouldn't I want to? Why would I want to like distract myself if Krishna is reality, the beautiful? If the source is actually Krishna, Krishna means all attractive. He's the all attractive source. Then maybe I should protect that precious quality of being able to see that and remember that. And so that's what all those things are there for. They're not like wagging your finger, you're bad, or control, or they're actually just like protection. When something's precious, you want to protect it, right? Sometimes you see in Vrindavan like these fresh new trees, so they have to be put like inside a little cage because the monkeys will come and just wring them, absolutely rip them apart until they're strong enough to stand on their own. And just like if anybody is precious to you, you want them protected. Your children, your spouse, like you should have a sense of protectiveness, and there's a certain sense of like almost positive ownership around that person. It's like they're their own person, but I adore them and I cherish them, and therefore I want them to be okay. And so we're receiving that protection from our acharyas who are like, you're so dear to Krishna, I'm begging you, please protect yourself from these things. It'll really help you. And it's if you start to do that, especially if you're taking up the positives, then you start to realize, wow, I'm saving myself a lot of trouble. This is a really good idea. Thank you, Gurudev and Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya. So thank you for that reflection.
Yeah, no worries. I thought it was also interesting that they threw in the hoarding of gold. So I had to, when I was reading it, I was like, wait a minute, that's five. But then when I read it again, it said, that because the hoarding of gold or greediness, material money greediness is, often the root cause of all, and that drives you all to the other things. So,
Sure. Yeah, somebody's getting paid for all those sports gambling ads. I promise you
right.
that. Yeah. Okay. I think we can jump in. We can do this. We can finish the last two chapters of the first canto and still have time for Canto 1 wide reflections, which is going to be, I don't want to oversell it, but that's going to be amazing. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanang Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswating Vyasang Tato Jayamudidayet Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. All right, Canto 1, Chapter 18. Maharaj Parikshit cursed by a Brahmana boy. Okay. The beginning of the chapter starts with Sutta Goswami summarizing Parikshit's birth and how he leaves his body, his death, and how he dealt with Kali. Due to the mercy of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, who acts wonderfully, Maharaj Parikshit, though struck by the weapon of the son of Drona in his mother's womb, could not be burned. Her Ashvatthama tried to kill him with a targeted mantra weapon, but Krishna protected him. Furthermore, Maharaj Parikshit was always consciously surrendered to the personality of Godhead, and therefore he was neither afraid nor overwhelmed by fear due to a snake bird which was to bite him because of the fury of a Brahmana boy. Snake bird. This pastime going to be revealed to us here. Mm-hmm. Furthermore, after leaving all his associates, the king surrendered himself as a disciple to the son of Vyasa, Shukadeva Goswami, and thus he was able to understand the actual position of the personality of Godhead, and at last give up his material body on the bank of the Ganges. So some stories, there's like a, like rom-coms, you have like, will they or won't they? Are they gonna be an item? And some movies you have like stories you have like, oh, were they gonna survive or not survive? Bhagavatam is about something much deeper than that. It's not about whether Maharaj Parikshit is gonna live or die. Why? Because everybody dies. Everyone dies. Spoiler alert. It's like the writing's on the wall. In case we didn't notice it, every material body has to end, including Maharaj Parikshit. He's gonna die, but it's about what he does with what the time he has left in that material body, in that material life. So he became fearless and gave up his body on the bank of the Ganges. Verse 4, this was so because those who have dedicated their lives to the transcendental topics of the personality of Godhead, of whom the Vedic hymns sing, and who are constantly engaged in remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, do not run the risk of having misconceptions even at the last moment of their lives. Verse 6, the very day and moment the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, left this earth, the personality of Kali, who promotes all kinds of irreligious activities, came into this world. Maharaj Parikshit was a realist, like the bees who only accept the essence of a flower. He knew perfectly well that in the age of Kali, auspicious things produce good effects immediately, whereas inauspicious things must be actually performed to render effects. So he was never envious of the personality of Kali. So, in the purport, Prabhupada talks about this. In this fallen age, because the living beings are in an awkward position, the Supreme Lord has given some special facilities to them. So by the will of the Lord, a living being does not become a victim of a sinful act until the act is actually performed. In other ages, simply by thinking of performing a sinful act, one used to become a victim of the act. On the contrary, a living being in this age is awarded with the results of pious acts simply by thinking of them. Maharaj Parikshit, being the most learned and experienced king by the grace of the Lord, was not unnecessarily envious, right, or opposed to the personality of Kali, because he did not intend to give him any chance to perform any sinful acts. He protected his subjects from falling prey to the sinful acts of the age of Kali, At the same time, he gave full facility to the age of Kali by allotting him some particular places. One can attain salvation simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord. Thus, Maharaj Parikshit made an organized effort to propagate the chanting of the Lord's holy name, and thus he saved citizens from the clutches of Kali. It is for this advantage only that great sages sometimes wish all good for the age of Kali. So, in previous ages, if you thought of doing something that was impious, you got the result of it. We don't have that because our minds are out of control. And you actually have to do it to get the consequence. If it's negative. If it's positive, then even thinking about doing it, even if you don't follow through, it gives you some benefit. That's what this verse is talking about, Prabhupada's elaborating. Because we need help. We really need help. This is the fallen age. We really need help. So this is an example of that. It's like, if your mind is ever chaotic and giving you trouble, just remember, it's in the cards. It's like, that's the way it is. And if you could just try to even think of doing something good, right? Then get the ball rolling. Try to, like, for example, if you can chant. If you can't chant, want to chant. Think about chanting. Get yourself some friends who like to chant. Hang out with them. Be around them while they chant. And appreciate their chanting. And think, boy, it'd be really nice if I could chant like that one day. And next thing you know, you'll be chanting. And so like that, there's so much concession. There's so much mercy. We've talked about this many, many times in many ways. Just appreciate devotional service, being positive, finding the value in other people's bhakti and how uplifting that is. It's the same principle here. Even if you don't do something good, if you just think about it or appreciate it, you actually get swept along in the positive merit of that. So, continuing. Verse 8, Maharaj Parikshit considered that less intelligent men might find the personality of Kali to be very powerful, but those who were self-controlled would have nothing to fear. The king was powerful like a tiger and took care of the foolish, careless persons. Verse 10, those who are desirous of achieving complete perfection in life must submissively hear all topics that are connected with the transcendental activities and qualities of the personality of Godhead, who acts wonderfully. The good sages said, O grave Sutta Goswami, may you live many years and have eternal fame, for you are speaking very nicely about the activities of Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. This is just like nectar for mortal beings like us. Verse 13 is actually kind of a famous verse. It's repeated. There are 3 incidents of this verse in almost the same Sanskrit like vocabulary. There's some small differences, but they occur through a different place. One is in Canto 6, one is here, and one I forget where. The verse is, verse 13, Tulyama levena pina svadguna punadpavam bhagavat songi sangasya martyanang kim uta shishah. The value of a moment's association with the devotee of the Lord cannot even be compared to the attainment of heavenly planets or liberation from matter. And what to speak of worldly benedictions in the form of material prosperity, which are for those who are meant for death. Report. When there are some similar points, it is possible to compare one thing to another. One cannot compare the association of a pure devotee to anything material. Persons who are addicted to material happiness aspire to reach the heavenly planets, and those who are advanced in material philosophical speculations aspire after liberation from all bondage. When one becomes frustrated with all kinds of material advancement, one desires the opposite type of liberation, which is called apunarbhava, or no rebirth. But the pure devotees of the Lord do not aspire after the happiness obtained in the heavenly kingdom, nor do they aspire after liberation from material bondage. In other words, for the pure devotees, the material pleasures obtainable are like phantasmagoria, and because they are already liberated from all material conceptions of pleasure and distress, they are factually liberated even in the material world. This means that the pure devotees of the Lord are engaged in a transcendental existence, namely in the loving service of the Lord, both in the material world and in the spiritual world. Since they have nothing to do with anything material, what pleasure can they derive from material benedictions like kingship or other overlordships, which are finished quickly with the end of the body? Devotional service is eternal. It has no end. Therefore, it is spiritual. Therefore, because it is spiritual. Therefore, since the assets of a pure devotee are completely different from material assets, There is no comparison between the two. Sutta Goswami was a pure devotee, and therefore his association with the sages in Naimisharanya is unique. In the material world, association with gross materialists is veritably condemned. And just the opposite is Bhagavat Sangi, or one who is always in the association with the Lord's name, form, qualities, etc. Such association is always desirable. It is worshipable. It is praiseworthy. And one may accept it as the highest goal of life. So, having spoken at length about Krishna and now Maharaj Parikshit, Sudha Goswami is saying, okay, I answered your questions about him. And now the sages are saying, thank you. Thank you so much. Actually, your association can't be compared to anything else. Thank you so much for being who you are. This is why they asked him to speak. After all, he was the most qualified and experienced devotee in their midst. And now they're continuing their comments. The sages are. Verse 15, O Sutta Goswami, you are a learned and pure devotee of the Lord because the personality of Godhead is your chief object of service. Therefore, please describe to us the pastimes of the Lord, which are above all material conception, for we are anxious to receive such messages. Please describe those topics of the Lord by which Maharaj Parikshit, whose intelligence was fixed on liberation, attained the lotus feet of the Lord. So they've heard that Maharaj Parikshit took shelter of Shukadeva Goswami and heard about Krishna. They know that because he just said it like in passing. Okay, that's how he lived and that's how he died. And they're saying, okay, but we want details. Give us the deets. Yeah, what did they talk about though? What did he hear about? Specifically, what did he hear about? I want to know. I want to know what he heard about. What about Krishna? What happened? What stories? What pastimes? Thus, please narrate to us the narrations of the unlimited, for they are purifying and supreme. They were spoken to Maharaj Parikshit, and they are very dear to the pure devotees, being full of bhakti yoga. Verse 20. It is now ascertained that he, the personality of Godhead, is unlimited, and there is none equal to him. Consequently, no one can speak of him adequately. Great demigods cannot obtain the favor of the goddess of fortune even by prayers, but this very goddess renders service unto the Lord, although he is unwilling to have such service. Who can be worthy of the name of the Supreme Lord but the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna? Brahmaji collected the water emanating from the nails of his feet in order to award it to Lord Shiva as a worshipful welcome. This very water, the Ganges, is purifying the whole universe, including Lord Shiva. Self-controlled persons who are attached to the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, can all of a sudden give up the world of material attachment, including the gross body and subtle mind, and go away to attain the highest perfection of the renounced order of life, by which non-violence and renunciation are consequential. O rishis, O sages, who are as powerfully pure as the sun, I shall try to describe to you, Sutta Goswami says, the transcendental pastimes of Vishnu as far as my knowledge is concerned. As the birds fly in the sky as far as their capacity allows, so do the learned devotees describe the Lord as far as their realization allows. This is something that, an analogy that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami uses in the Chaitanya Charitamrita too, that all these birds are flying in the sky. You got your hummingbirds, and they can go about this far off the ground, and you got like your swallows, and they go that far off the ground, and you got like your seagulls can go higher, and you got your eagles, and you got albatrosses, but they're flying as high as they can fly. And so he's saying, as much as I'm able to, as my capacity allows, I'll describe, because learned devotees describe the Lord as far as the realization allows. So this is verse 23, purport. The Supreme Absolute Truth is unlimited. No living being can know about the unlimited by their limited capacity. The Lord is impersonal, personal, and localized. By his impersonal feature, he is all-pervading Brahman. By his localized feature, he is present in everyone's heart as the Supreme Soul. And by his ultimate personal feature, he is the object of transcendental loving service by his fortunate associates, the pure devotees. The pastimes of the Lord in different features can only be estimated partly by the greatly learned devotees. So Srila Sutta Goswami has rightly taken this position in describing the pastimes of the Lord as far as he is realized. Factually, only the Lord himself can describe himself, and his learned devotee also can describe him as far as the Lord gives him the power of description. You know, when Prahlad Maharaj had the association of Nrsingadev, when Nrsingadev came to him, When Dhruva Maharaj, also the same thing happened there. When he saw his Lord, they were both choked up and they couldn't say anything. They couldn't say anything. When Dhruva was choked up, Lord Nrsingadev placed his conch shell, I think, on his head and blessed him. It's in the Canto 3. 4? 4. Early 4. And when Prahlad Maharaj was choked up, Lord Nrsingadev raised him up and blessed him. And so it's the same thing. It's like they both offered amazing prayers. They both have all-time prayers. On Friday mornings, we're reading Prahlad's prayers right now, but as Prabhupada's pointing out, even the ability to offer prayers is a blessing that the Lord gives us. So we're just hearing what Sutta Goswami was able to recall from what Shukadev Goswami shared about the glories of the Lord. That's made it into the 18,000 verses of Bhagavatam that we are reading. You know, in the higher planets, the Bhagavatams there are bigger. They have longer lives. We're like, we barely have time. We're like, oh man, Bhagavad Gita, 500 pages. Oh, I don't have time for it. So like, here's your Bhagavatam. It's only 18,000 verses. In the heavenly planets, it's much larger. Krishna's pastimes they're unlimited. So when we have a spiritual body, we can read and chant and hear and sing unlimitedly. For now, we only have 12 cantos worth of content. So here it is. Verse 24 to 25. Once upon a time, Maharaj Parikshit, while engaged in hunting in the forest with bow and arrows, became extremely fatigued, hungry, and thirsty while following the stags. So, Kshatriyas, generally, violence to animals is not useful or desirable. One of the services of the Kshatriya is to protect by force of arms. And so in order to do that, they have to stay in shape to do that, which means keeping their body fit and keeping expertise in weaponry, and also keeping the forest free from any animals that would upset the ecological balance and also disturb the sages who are, in meditation, the Brahmins and such. So they were allowed a controlled amount of violence by going hunting periodically. So he's a king, he's going hunting. Bud became hungry, thirsty, and tired. While searching for a reservoir of water, he entered the hermitage of the well-known Shamika Rishi, a sage called Shamika, and saw the sage sitting silently with closed eyes. Purport. The Supreme Lord is so kind to his pure devotees that in proper time he calls such devotees up to him, and thus creates an auspicious circumstance for the devotee. Maharaj Parikshit was a pure devotee of the Lord, and there was no reason for him to become extremely fatigued, hungry, and thirsty, because the devotee of the Lord never becomes perturbed by such bodily demands. But by the desire of the Lord, even such a devotee can become apparently fatigued and thirsty, just to create a situation favorable for his renunciation of worldly activities. One has to give up all attachment for worldly relations before one is able to go back to Godhead. And thus, when a devotee is too much absorbed in worldly affairs, the Lord creates a situation to cause indifference. The Supreme Lord never forgets his pure devotee, even though he may be engaged in so-called worldly affairs. Sometimes he, Krishna, creates an awkward situation, and the devotee becomes obliged to renounce all worldly affairs. The devotee can understand by the signal of the Lord, but others take it to be unfavorable and frustrating. Maharaj Parikshit was to become the medium for the revelation of Srimad Bhagavatam by Lord Shri Krishna, as his grandfather Arjuna was the medium for the Bhagavad Gita. Had Arjuna not been taken up with an illusion of family affection by the will of the Lord, the Bhagavad Gita would not have been spoken by the Lord for the good of all concerned. Similarly, had Maharaj Parikshit not been fatigued, hungry, and thirsty at this time, Srimad Bhagavatam would not have been spoken by Srila Shukadeva Goswami, the prime authority of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is a prelude to the circumstances under which Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken for the benefit of all. The prelude, therefore, begins with the words, once upon a time. Verse 27. The sage, in meditation, was covered by the skin of a stag, and long compressed hair was scattered all over him. The king, whose palate was dry from thirst, asked him for water. The king, not received by any formal welcome by means of being offered a seat, place, water, and sweet address, considered himself neglected, and so thinking, he became angry. What an unusual thing. Pure devotee becomes angry. Prabhupada talks in the purport that when you have a guest, at least you have to give them a sitting place and some water and kind words. I mean, there's even more, like you should offer them so many things, but even if you're a very poor person, you have no facility, at least bring them in, sit them down, and give them some water. But Maharaj Parikshit was literally the king. You know, he's walking in his kingdom, and he's not getting even, yeah, he's completely ignored. This is actually very difficult. You know, it's like one thing to have somebody insult you. It's even worse in a way to be ignored. Like, you look at yourself, I mean, am I even here? Like, what happened? I mean, like, do I exist? It's so painful to be neglected like that. And at the same time, Maharaj Parikshit was a great devotee, and so, as Prabhupada says, to become angry in such a grave situation was not unnatural for the king, but because the king himself was not less than a great saint, his becoming angry and taking action were astonishing. So it must be accepted that it was so ordained by the supreme will of the Lord. The king was a great devotee of the Lord, and the saint was also as good as the king. But by the will of the Lord, the circumstances were so created that they became ways to the king's becoming unattached to family connection and government activities, and thus becoming a completely surrendered soul unto the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna. Verse 29. O Brahmanas, the circumstances having distressed him with extreme hunger and thirst, the king directed toward the sage his anger and envy, which he had never before directed toward a Brahmana. Right? Because Kshatriyas are meant to be subservient to Brahmins. It's a very unusual circumstance that he would actually be insulted, feel an insult. While leaving, the king, being so insulted, picked up a lifeless snake with his bow and angrily placed it on the shoulder of the sage. Then he returned to his palace. It's like almost sarcastic, like, oh, you're such a great sage. Here, I'll garland you with a dead snake. It's petty, right? It's a very petty thing to do.
Yeah.
Verse 31, upon returning, he began to contemplate and argue within himself whether the sage had actually been in meditation, with senses concentrated and eyes closed, or whether he had been feigning trance, just to avoid receiving a lower kshatriya. Right? So, as Prabhupada points out, being a devotee of the Lord the King did not approve of his own action. So he started to second guess himself. Prabhupada says, repentance comes in the mind of a good soul as soon as they commit something wrong. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami do not believe that the king's action was due to his past misdeeds. The arrangement was so made by the Lord just to call the king back home, back to Godhead. So there's a special thing happening here, the special lila. But even if you're not in the middle of the special lila of the Lord and you like act out because of that special pastime of the Lord, if you step out of your own integrity, the sign of your own sincerity is that you feel something about that. You're like, I don't feel right. You know, the verse said he argued within himself. He was like, was I really? You know that voice of ego is trying to justify, like, oh yeah, I'm totally right. I'm totally right to cut him off in traffic. Did you see how they almost rear-ended me? It's like, but then there's that voice of reason is like, no, that was a jerk move, man. You shouldn't have done that. And then giving them the finger like that, that's not you. You know, there's always like that voice of reason. And so Maharaj Parikshit is realizing, that was so petty. Why did I do that? And Prabhupada saying this is the voice of sincerity. This is the sign of a devotee, that they have repentance. Verse 32, the sage had a son who was very powerful, being a Brahmana's son. While he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there the boy spoke as follows. His name was Shringi. Shringi said, oh, just look at the sins of the rulers who, like crows and watchdogs at the door, perpetrate sins against their masters, contrary to the principles governing servants. And again, Kshatriyas are meant to be respectful of Brahmanas. But there was some way in which, at least to some degree, Maharaj Parikshit was like a little bit disrespectful. Again, just at the surface level. But Shringi, he had some ability to give to some mystic ability. Why? Because he's a real Brahmana. His father's a Brahmana and he's a Brahmana. And Prabhupada's going to talk about that here. Right. So from the purport to 33, By the influence of Kali, the son of a Brahmana became puffed up with Brahminical power and thus wrongly compared Maharaj Parikshit to crows and watchdogs. Thus the downfall of the Brahminical prowess began as they gave importance to birthright without culture. The downfall of the Brahmana caste began in the age of Kali. And since Brahmins are the heads of the social order, all other orders of society also began to deteriorate. This beginning of Brahminical deterioration was highly deplored by the father of Shringi, as we will find. He misused his Brahminical strength to curse the king unlawfully. Right? He took an external view of the system. Look, this is a king. He's supposed to follow us. How dare he disrespect my father? Right? What is a Brahmin's qualification? Tolerance. Right? Kshatriyas have to be brave. Their qualification is courage in battle, braveness, resourcefulness. A Brahmin has to be tolerant, patient, forbearing, simple, religious. The qualifications are given in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 45 or so. And here he is, this son who's like, how dare he disrespect my daddy, right? And so he's actually not functioning as a Brahmin, but he's misusing his Brahminical power to curse Parikshit. Verse 35, I myself shall take up this matter and punish them. Just witness my power. The son of the Rishi, his eyes red hot with anger, touched the water of the river Kaushika while speaking to his playmates and discharged the following thunderbolt of words. On the 7th day from today, a snake bird will bite the most wretched one of that dynasty, Maharaj Parikshit, because of his having broken the laws of etiquette by insulting my father. Thereafter, when the boy returned to the hermitage, he saw a snake on his father's shoulder, and out of his grief he cried very loudly. The sage, who was born in the family of Angira Muni, hearing his son crying, gradually opened his eyes and saw the dead snake around his neck. He threw the dead snake aside and asked his son why he was crying, whether anyone had done him harm. On hearing this, the son explained to him what had happened. Verse 41, the father heard from his son that the king had been cursed, although he should never have been condemned, for he was the best amongst all human beings. The sage did not congratulate his son, but on the contrary began to repent, saying, alas, what a great sinful act was performed by my son. He has awarded heavy punishment for an insignificant offense. From the purport, since Shamika Rishi was an experienced good Brahmana, he did not approve of the actions of his condemned son. He began to lament for all that his son had done. The king was beyond the jurisdiction of curses as a general rule, and what to speak of a good king like Maharaj Parikshit. The offense of the king was most insignificant, and his being condemned to death was certainly a very great sin for Shringi. Therefore, Rishi Shamika regretted the whole incident. Verse 42, oh my boy, your intelligence is immature, and therefore you have no knowledge that the king, who is the best amongst human beings, is as good as the personality of Godhead. He is never to be placed on an equal footing with common men. The citizens of the state live in prosperity, being protected by his unsurpassable prowess. Verse 46, the Emperor Parikshit is a pious king. He is highly celebrated and is a first-class devotee of the personality of Godhead. He is a saint amongst royalty and has performed many horse sacrifices. When such a king is tired and fatigued, being stricken with hunger and thirst, he does not at all deserve to be cursed. Then the Rishi prayed to the all-pervading personality of Godhead to pardon his immature boy who had no intelligence, and who committed the great sin of cursing a person who was completely free from all sins, who was subordinate, and who deserved to be protected. Verse 48. The devotees of the Lord are so forbearing that even though they are defamed, cheated, cursed, disturbed, neglected, or even killed, they are never inclined to avenge themselves. They may be inclined to protect each other, but they're never inclined towards vengeance. This is my own little purport here. Verse 49, the sage thus regretted the sin committed by his own son. He did not take the insult paid by the king very seriously. Verse 50, last verse of the chapter. Generally, the transcendentalists, even though engaged by others in the dualities of the material world, are not distressed. Nor do they take pleasure in worldly things, for they are transcendentally engaged. So pain and pleasure aren't really a thing for persons who are getting their taste from their spiritual activities. So neither Maharaj Parikshit nor the sage Shamika were really about this whole insult and respect thing, you know? But Prabhupada says in the purport, the king was a devotee, the rishi was a mystic. Therefore, both of them were unattached to the accidental incident created by the supreme will. The playful child was an instrument in fulfilling the Lord's will. Chapter 18 completed. All right. Let's, you know what? Let me just go straight into verse in chapter 19. So we'll finish this, and then we'll take any comments because we're already at 7:30. The appearance of Shukadeva Goswami. While returning home, the king felt that the act he had committed was heinous and uncivilized, so he was distressed. Verse 2, due to my neglecting the injunctions of the Supreme Lord, I must certainly expect some difficulty to overcome me in the near future. I now desire without reservation that the calamity come now, for in this way I may be freed of the sinful action and not commit such an offense again. Right? This is very interesting. He's saying, like, I've made a mistake. Better the result of it come to me now. I don't want to pay with interest. Let it come straight. I'll pay for it willingly. This is actually the sign of somebody who's very wise. You can't get away with anything. You can get away with something if you're considering it from a material point of view. Like, can I commit a crime and not be caught? Yeah, materially. Like, if you consider if there's a security camera or not, then you can be caught or not. If you consider whether the state can catch you, you can be caught or not. But Krishna, you can't run from Krishna. You can't. It's not. Don't even try. You know, like a wise person is like, no. Krishna's system is perfect. Everything has a cost. And if you pay up front, it's better. Like if you willingly pay for things, at least you're an honest karmic dealer. Like I want good karma, so I'll be like a pious, religious, truthful person, and I'll get my karmic results. I'll have a happier life. That's honest. It's not devotional, but it's honest karma. Somebody who's trying to cheat the system will be like, just doing whatever they can and thinking they don't have to pay. Well, then material nature will come and pickpocket you from your back pocket, and she'll take some more out of interest because you didn't pay up front. So it's like that. That's reality, actually. That's how things work. And Maharaj Parikshit knows that, and he feels like I was out of line. Better that it comes back to me now. The purport Prabhupada says, by suffering personally, he would be restrained from future sins. And at the same time, the sin which he had committed would be counteracted so his descendants would not suffer. That is the way a responsible devotee thinks. Verse 4, while the king was thus repenting, he received news of his imminent death, which would be due to the bite of a snake bird, occasioned by the curse spoken by the sage's son. The king accepted this as good news, for it would be the cause of his indifference toward worldly things. Wild. So he's regretted his having overstepped, and he gratefully accepts the curse and renounces everything. These first 7 verses. Verse 7, thus the king, the worthy descendant of the Pandavas, decided once and for all, and sat on the Ganges' bank to fast until death, and give himself up to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who alone is able to award liberation. So, freeing himself from all kinds of association and attachments, he accepted the vows of a sage. He was powerful enough to counteract the curse, actually. Prabhupada makes it clear in these purports. But he didn't think that was necessary. He saw that as the will of the Lord, because he understood that everybody's got to die anyway. And he was very humble. He thought, I was so attached. This had to happen to me. Krishna is so kind to me that he had to do this so I could actually become disengaged. I'm such a materialist. I would have just become lost again in my beautiful wives and my children and the royalty and opulence of being a king. This is just for my own betterment. This is how devotees think. So he's like, no, I'm not going to counteract this curse. This is for my benefit. This is happening for me, not to me, right? So he's actually going to leave his body consciously. At that time, all the great minds and thinkers, accompanied by their disciples and sages who could verily sanctify a place of pilgrimage just by their presence, arrived there on the plea of making a pilgrim's journey. They included Atri, Chavana, Shardvan, Arishtanemi, Bhrigu, Vasishta, Parashara, Vishvamitra, Angira, Parashurama, Utatya, Indra Pramada, Idmavahu, Medhatiti, Devala, Arshtashena, Bhardvaj, Gautama, Pippalada, Maitreya, Aurva, Kavasha, Kumbhayoni, Dvaipayana, that's Vyasa, and the great personality Narada. After all the sages and others had seated themselves comfortably, the king, humbly standing before them with folded hands, told them of his decision to fast until death. Verse 13, the fortunate king said, "Indeed, we are the most grateful of all the kings who are trained to get favors from the great souls. Generally, you sages consider royalty as refuse to be rejected and left in a distant place. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has graciously overtaken me in the form of a Brahmana's curse. Due to my being too much attached to family life, the Lord, in order to save me, has appeared before me in such a way that only out of fear I will detach myself from the world. O Brahmanas, just accept me as a completely surrendered soul, and let Mother Ganges, the representative of the Lord, accept me also in that way, for I have already taken the lotus feet of the Lord into my heart. Let the snake bird, or whatever magical thing the Brahmana created, bite me at once. I only desire that you all continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu." Wow. How instructive. How instructive. How instructive. So he's submitting himself to his superiors and the devotees. Again, offering obeisances unto all you Brahmins, I pray that if I should again take my birth in the material world, I will have complete attachment to the unlimited Lord, association with his devotees, and friendly relations with all living beings. Also very instructive. This is also almost exactly the prayer that, what was his name? Sudama, the barber, the merchant, not the barber, florist, had in Canto 10. If I have to come back again, I just want three things. I want complete attachment to Krishna, association with his devotees, and friendship for all living entities. It's the same thing Sudama said. Pure love for Krishna, friendship with his devotees, and compassion and mercy for all living entities. This is like a universal prayer here. So, verse 17, in perfect self-control, Maharaj Parikshit sat down on a seat of straw with straw roots facing to the east, placed on the southern bank of the Ganges, and he himself faced the north. Just previously, he had given charge of his kingdom over to his son. Thus the king sat to fast until death. All the demigods of the higher planets praised the king's actions, and in pleasure continually scattered flowers over the earth and beat celestial drums. All the great sages who were assembled there also praised the decision of Maharaj Parikshit, and they expressed their approval by saying, "Very good." The actual word they used, I think, is sadhu.
Oh, really?
Sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu, sadhu. It is good. Naturally, the sages are inclined to do good to common men, for they have all the qualitative powers of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, they were very much pleased to see Maharaj Parikshit, a devotee of the Lord, and they spoke as follows. Verse 21, we shall all wait here until the foremost devotee of the Lord, Maharaj Parikshit, returns to the supreme planet, which is completely free from all mundane attachment, contamination, and all kinds of lamentation. Verse 23, the king said, O great sages, you have all very kindly assembled here, having come from all parts of the universe. You are all as good as supreme knowledge personified, who resides in the planet above the three worlds. Consequently, you are naturally inclined to do good to others, but for this you have no interest, either in this life or in the next. O trustworthy Brahmanas, I now ask you about my immediate duty. Please, after proper deliberation, tell me of the unalloyed duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically of those who are just about to die. Right? His immediate duty. In other words, he's accepted he's going to die, like very soon. Prabhupada kind of like almost makes a joke, but it's also kind of like very soberly true. He says, Maharaj Parikshit had 7 days to live. How many days do we have? Prabhupada said also, 7 days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We will die on one of these days. The difference is Maharaj Parikshit knew he was going to live for 7 days. I don't even know if I'm going to live for 7 seconds. I could die at the end of the sentence. So Prabhupada's point is that we actually have a sense of urgency if we take it ourselves. Maharaj Parikshit just buckled down. He's like, that's it. I'm done with everything else. I want you great devotees to please inform me, what should I do with the balance of my 7 days that's left? Verse 25, at that moment there appeared the powerful son of Vyasadeva, who traveled over the earth disinterested and satisfied with himself. There's a description of his form and his beauty. He was naked, as we heard earlier, but he didn't care because he was completely transcendental to such things. Verse 29, Maharaj Parikshit, who was also known as Vishnu Rata, one who was always protected by Vishnu, bowed his head to receive the chief guest, Shukadeva Goswami. Verse 30. Shukadeva Goswami was then surrounded by saintly sages and demigods, just as the moon is surrounded by stars, planets, and other heavenly bodies. His presence was gorgeous, and he was respected by all. The sage Sri Shukadeva Goswami sat perfectly pacified, intelligent, and ready to answer any question without hesitation. The great devotee Maharaj Parikshit approached him, offered his respects by bowing before him, and politely inquired with sweet words and folded hands. Prabhupada points out, the gesture now adopted by Maharaj Parikshit of questioning a master is quite befitting in terms of scriptural injunctions. The scriptural injunction is that one should humbly approach a spiritual master to understand the transcendental science. This is Bhagavad Gita 4:34. Tadpiti pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. You should humble yourself. Pranipat means literally get down, get low. Humble yourself. Ask questions. In fact, the word is pariprashna, which means ask thoroughly. Thoroughly ask questions. Ask completely around the topic. And seva, do service. Be a humble servant. And then such a person who you approach for the truth will give you everything in their heart. So Maharaj Parikshit is doing exactly this. Prabhupada says he was now prepared for meeting his death, and within the very short time of 7 days, he was to know the process of entering the kingdom of God. In such important cases, one is required to approach a spiritual master. There is no necessity of approaching a spiritual master unless one is in need of solving the problems of life. One who does not know how to put questions before the spiritual master has no business seeing them. And the qualification of the spiritual master is perfectly manifested in the person of Shukadeva Goswami. Prabhupada talks again here that Shukadeva Goswami achieved perfection by speaking Bhagavatam. Maharaj Parikshit is going to achieve perfection by hearing it. Both are equally good. So Maharaj Parikshit speaks. Verse 33. Simply by remembering you, our house has become instantly sanctified, and what to speak of seeing you, touching you, washing your holy feet, and offering you a seat in our home. Verse 35, Lord Krishna, who is very dear to the sons of King Pandu, has accepted me as one of those relatives just to please his great cousins and brothers. Otherwise, without being inspired by Lord Krishna, how is it that you have voluntarily appeared here, though you are moving incognito to the common man and are not visible to us who are on the verge of death? You are the spiritual master of great saints and devotees. I am therefore begging you to show the way of perfection for all persons, and especially for one who is about to die. So these questions here, these fundamental questions here are asked by Maharaj Parikshit, which are going to establish the basis of really the rest of the Bhagavatam. What should one, the way of perfection, especially for one who's about to die. Verse 38, please let me know what a man should hear, chant, remember, and worship, and also what he should not do. Please explain all this to me. O powerful Brahman, it is said that you hardly stay in the houses of men long enough to milk a cow. Sri Suta Goswami said, the king thus spoke and questioned the sage using sweet language. Then the great and powerful personality, the son of Vyasadeva, who knew the principles of religion, began his reply. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the first canto, chapter 19 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Appearance of Shukadeva Goswami, end of the first canto. So Maharaj Parikshit begins his reply. And scene. If you want to know more, you got to read Canto 2. We're going to go into that, I'm just saying, in a couple weeks. But for now, that's it. So we'll take now any questions, comments, reflections, anything you heard at all on the entire first canto. And I request you please to share your reflections in the chat this week and next week. We're not going to have, right? We're not going to have a...
Well, next week will be a break.
Yeah, we're not going to have a class on first canto. So what you're going to do is just keep reading if you're still reading, and keep the conversation going in the WhatsApp. I'll join in. We'll add our favorite parts of this canto. We read actually so much. Mm-hmm. We're not going to have time the next 17 minutes before 8 o'clock, to go over the whole canto, but we read so much. I mean, just looking at a list of the chapter titles is really something here. Questions by the sages. Divinity and Divine Service, chapter 2, is like practically a summary of the whole process of bhakti. Verses 15 to like 20 are kind of like the summary of the whole process. Prabhupada quotes those verses in his poem on the Jaladuta, how your heart becomes purified by hearing and serving, and how you become free from the lower modes of nature. Then you develop standing in goodness, then you develop love for Krishna and all these things. So that's a very, very condensed, powerful chapter. Chapter 3 is a list of incarnations. Chapters 4 and 5 were Narada instructing Vyasadeva, including talking about his own life. And 6. 7 was Ashwatthama's punishment. And 8, Queen Kundi's prayers. 9, Bhishma Dev's prayers. 10, Krishna leaves for Dwarka. 11, he enters Dwarka. He's greeted. 12 is the qualities of Parikshit. 13, Dhritarashtra quits home after being heavily chastised by his brother Vidura to wake him up from illusion. 14, Krishna's disappeared. And 15, Arjuna's lamentation on the matter and his taking shelter of the instructions he received in Bhagavad Gita, and all the Pandavas retiring. 16 is Parikshit's receiving the age of Kali and his treatment of it when Dharma was being abused and the cow of the earth. 17 also. And 18 was his curse. 19 was the appearance of his spiritual master and his accepting the curse and deciding to fast until death and asking what he should do with that time. All right. What reflections do you have? A lot.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In text 38, the purport is what, let me know what a man should hear, chant, remember, worship, and also what he should not do. Please explain this to me. Is that explained somewhere?
Yeah,
Is there an answer?
that actual answer comes at the beginning of Canto 2.
Oh, okay. So that's the cliffhanger then. Okay.
I think you can guess what it is. I mean, Prabhupada has actually said it. And if you look at the beginning of the chapter, chapter 19 begins, was it 18 or 19? No, it was 18. Let's look at 18 again, because I can give the spoiler because Susa Goswami's already given the spoiler. He talks about how in verse 2, chapter 18, Maharaj Parikshit was neither afraid nor overwhelmed by fear due to a snake bird which was to bite him because of the fury of a Brahmin boy. Furthermore, after leaving all his associates, the king surrendered himself as a disciple to the son of Vyasa, Shukadev, and thus he was able to understand the actual position of the personality of Godhead, and at last gave up his material body. Verse 4, 18:4. This was so because those who have dedicated their lives to the transcendental topics of the personality of Godhead, of whom the Vedic hymns sing, and who are constantly engaged in remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, do not run the risk of having misconceptions, even at the last moment of their lives. So he was able to maintain remembrance. How? By remembering, engaging in the topics of the Lord. So the answer is going to have to do something to do with that. He wanted the highest thing. He's like, that's it, I'm going to die. And don't forget, Parikshit is the one who saw Krishna in the womb. So to see Krishna again is like his whole life's mission, right? For him, it really is like going back home in a very visceral way. And so he's just like, what should I do now? And so Shukadeva is going to answer, but we've already heard the spoiler, which is that he's going to die, but he's going to die in consciousness of Krishna, having engaged completely in hearing and chanting about Krishna to never forget him. He's just hearing and chanting until he dies. That's what he's going to do.
I was thinking about how, Queen Kunji's prayers are in the Canto, and how she prays in one of the verses for great calamity again and again, because it's then that she remembers Krishna. And then with Maharaj Parikshit here at the end of the Canto, like what in many ways, what greater calamity is there than like someone you love dying, or your own life ending,
right?
Yet he's like so fearless, I was thinking about how we've spoken many times about when Prabhupada was asked, what do you think about when you're chanting? He says, or how do you feel when you're chanting? And he said, fearless.
He did.
So I was just thinking about how, Maharaj Parikshit was a king and was in the material world, but was deeply spiritual and was, a saintly person. Right?
Yeah.
And so he had a very, I'm sure, a very robust spiritual practice and sadhana and such.
And still it was ramped up.
Right.
It became more urgent.
Right. And even in the face of knowing, okay, great, I got 7 days. All right, let's go. It's kind of like that energy versus
it's like the power of a deadline.
God, everything's ending, just a very
it's the power of a deadline. Right? It's easy to take material life for granted when you think you're going to live forever.
So his urgency.
So his urgency was created. Even though he could have contradicted it, he's like, "No, this is what Krishna needs for me.
Just that
it's good for me. I accept it."
Deep faith and acceptance.
Yeah, and it's the same. You're right. It's the same kind of mood as Kunti Maharani, where it's like, actually, I look back at all those, frankly, travesties that we went through, and I'm so grateful to all of them, and I wish they would come again and again, because I felt your presence so keenly in all of that, Krishna, right? Because they took shelter. That's the difference between devotees and non-devotees. The difference isn't that devotees don't go through things in this world and non-devotees do. No, the difference is that the devotees are like, "Oh, Krishna, please help," So, like, got to get real. We got to get real. This is Kali Yuga. This morning, the president of this country said that tonight a great civilization may be wiped off the face of the planet because he's in the modes of nature. And here we are. We're like, yeah, this is Kali Yuga. And there's always some way or some shape in which some demoniac persons may be in the modes of nature. And if you look at that and you think like, okay, time to take shelter, then you win. That's what it's all about. That's actually what it's all about.
Have that same sense of urgency should be there for us.
Yeah, because it's not about the stuff that's going on externally. That's actually in the higher sense completely irrelevant. But it's about like using it to create a sense of urgency for yourself to get really the best benefit. No matter how many seconds or hundreds of years you have left on the planet, it's all about getting that benefit of Krishna consciousness. And so we're always doing that. Prabhupada was asked, because Prabhupada was there in India when there were bombs falling from Pakistan, and he asked, because there was some violence after World War II. He was asked what was it? Wording of the question, like something like, what will you do if a bomb comes? And he said, I will see it as Krishna. He really believed it like that. He wouldn't stop his hearing and chanting. He's like, that's okay. I'll see it as the loving hand of Krishna one way or another. That's Prabhupada, right? Like, that's a very high thing. That's like Kunti or like Maharaj Parikshit. Like, that's just like complete indifference to the material world. But even somebody who's still attached to the material world, it's like, well, what was it like for the demigods when Hiranyakashipu was around, torturing and terrorizing? Do you think it was easy for them? When he was forbidding the Brahmins from doing their sacrifices, and he was like killing cows, and like stuff happened. That's the world. And even people who are like, they still have some stake in the world, if they have some devotion, then when things go sideways, they take shelter of Krishna. That's what the demigods did. That's why they were cheering for Narasimha to kill Hiranyakashipu. They're like, you got to get rid of this guy. We need peace on this planet. We need stability. Brahma is always asking, Krishna to come and deal with the demons. It's like, no matter whether you're a pure devotee or a mixed devotee, just take shelter of Krishna. And that's the overarching theme. Just that the pure devotee, like, they have no other consideration. So they're actually in ecstasy, taking shelter of Krishna. We're aspiring for that. Like, Kunti's like, yeah, I missed all those times. I missed those. Remember those times when they tried to kill us, Krishna? Oh, it was so nice having you with us. So we're aspiring for that level of purity. But in any case, the process doesn't change. Thank you.
I was just thinking about how time's going to get us all. Like we're all going to die.
Correct.
And the overarching message throughout the entire canto is, focus on Krishna, focus on those pastimes, while all these material craziness is going on, really focus on Krishna. And if you go back to the beginning, the first few chapters, maybe 3 or 4, somewhere in there, it was, Vasudeva had written all these other texts before, and then, Narada Muni comes and says, Vyasadeva, yeah. And then Narada Muni comes and says, you know what? Write one that's more personal. Write one that's really personal, because all of civilization needs to understand Krishna on a personal level, because time's going to get us all and you need to focus on Krishna. So it's like, do I have the book for you? Like it's, I don't know. I was just thinking it's kind of circuitous that way.
Yeah, that's chapter 5. He said, you have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. Although great sages, you have very broadly described the 4 principles beginning with religious performances, you have not described the glories of the Supreme Personality, Vasudeva. The people in general are naturally inclined to enjoy, and you've encouraged them in that way in the name of religion. This is verily condemned and is quite unreasonable. Whatever you desire to describe that is separate in vision from the Lord simply reacts with different forms, names, and results to agitate the mind, as the wind agitates a boat which has no resting place. So he's like encouraging him in so many ways. Give him the straight sauce. Give him Krishna exactly, personally. They need it. And that continues to be true. We do need it. And we're getting it. That's why we're reading Bhagavatam. We could have a book club. We could read anything on Tuesday nights. We're reading Bhagavatam.
Yeah, and I was struck when in the verse that we just read, in one of the chapters, Liz, that it was by Krishna's mercy that we had the the Bhagavad Gita in his speech to Arjuna, and now is using the vehicle of Maharaj Parikshit to bring us the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that before this time, think about only the Brahmanas would have been reading about this. It was really once this started to be written, it was started to be made available to the masses, and think how lucky we are that we can go to Amazon or to the Krishna store, and all of a sudden this literature is available to us. But even if we have 70 years, we think we have all the time in the world to study this, and really we have to get serious about it.
Yeah, on this on-demand, printing is like unbelievable. The privilege. It's not that people wouldn't hear it; they would hear it from the Brahmins. But like to be able to have a Bhagavatam in your own house with all these verses and like be allowed to read Shastra. Who am I? I'm a Shudra. Like, how can I read Shastra? But the bhakti consideration is all important. We get to read and hear, and that's just like, yes, such a huge blessing, and so direct. Here we are, like we're reading about like how Krishna reciprocated with Bhishma Dev. Like what an amazing devotee, or Kunti, or Arjuna, or Parikshit, or Arjuna again, like after the battle of Kurukshetra, and Yudhishthir, and then Parikshit again. How Parikshit's going to die, hearing from Shukadev Goswami. Like wow, these are all time topics. It's such a powerful topic that Narada Muni and all the great sages are like converging, right? They're converging. Can you imagine if a world leader was like, that's it, I'm going to fast till death on the banks of a holy river. I just want to hear about God. Like what the news it would make, right? Like that's what happened. Like all the higher planets, like there was like an APB put out. King Parikshit's going to die, everybody. He just wants to hear about Krishna. And all the sages are like, I got to be there. I want to be there. I want to be in this class. I can't miss this. It's so, must see TV. Like they just have to be there, front row for this Bhagavatam class. They're like, I don't know how it's going to go down, but Maharaj Parikshit is like begging for some Krishna Katha. Someone's going to come and speak it. Like I just need to be there for that. And this is like, their whole conversation is recorded in the Bhagavatam. And we get to hear that? Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Thank you.
Maybe the Artemis too is going to bring something home.
Yeah. More Bhagavatams.
Eyes us.
Extra cantos from the higher planets. See what kind of Bhagavatams they're reading on the moon.
You know, I also want to say something that I just had a dear friend go home on, left the hospital to go on hospice. 7 days later, she died. And I mean, I think that's all everyone that knew her and knew about her, or, that we were all praying. But I think she felt it, but I don't really know. I didn't get to see her. She was in rough shape, and they were limiting people to come to the house. I don't know. It's still hard. I hear it, but death is still hard. It was a tough week.
Yeah. It's not that like if you look at Arjuna's reaction when he heard about all the Yadu dynasty dying, he wasn't cheerful. It was very painful for him.
Yeah.
It's natural and normal. But what also happened was that he reminded himself of Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita, and that pulled him out of that, because that's coming from a higher level than all the considerations of the body and mind that I completely commiserate with you. Like, it is very difficult. I'm still dealing with, the same kinds. I'm still in the world like you are, being buffeted by the waves. But
Right.
we all have to take shelter of these instructions and these sound vibrations and these pastimes, because like Parikshit did, like Arjuna did, like Kunti did, it doesn't stop. And they're modeling that for us. For us. Prabhupada did the same thing. He was speaking these purports into a microphone while his body was undergoing a level of pain and discomfort that is very difficult to imagine. Sitting there emaciated on a bed in Vrindavan. You've been there. You've been to that room.
Yes.
And he turned to his disciples at one point and said, "Don't think this won't happen to you." So all the devotees are always modeling this for us. So we get to just follow in that. Like, this is our line. This is our whole our legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, it's 8:01.
Mm-hmm.
The clock has struck 12 for now. I mean, there are no endings, but for today, this is an ending. And we'll keep hearing and chanting. And I want to hear your reflections on the first canto. We've read and explored so much, so please add them to the WhatsApp chat. Yes.
That will send an email about
being
a part of this.
We're going to send an email about the second canto container that's going to start in 2 weeks. Yeah. We're taking next week off from this Tuesday class, which is like a big bummer for me, but you're completely free to get together with each other and read and chant, and we can send out classes on the first canto and listen to them, and please reflect some more your favorite parts of the canto.
So we'll start on the 21st.
We'll start on the 21st.
And then
Canto 2.
Share your intro to Sanskrit.
Yeah, I'll also plug. I'm on the
29th.
At the request of several devotees and people, we're doing a little intro to Sanskrit class. It's going to start on Wednesdays. It's a series of classes. It's a course. It's going to start on Wednesdays, like 6:30 to 7:30, and it's getting to the nitty-gritty of Sanskrit, how it works as a language, vocabulary, pronunciation, meters, a little bit of grammar. We're going to use the Bhagavad Gita as a source book. We're going to get into like the actual linguistics of it. We can nerd out a little bit. It's totally fine. We're allowed to. Prabhupada gave us the word for all these Sanskrit verses exactly for that reason. We'll learn how to pronounce properly, and we'll feel the power of the sound vibration of the words that came out of Krishna's mouth and his devotees. It's an amazing language. It's actually an amazing language. So I've had the good fortune of hearing from some teachers and learning from some teachers. I'm by no means a fluent Sanskritist, but I have some knowledge, and I'm going to be passing it on. If you want to know more, how can people know more?
We said email you, but I feel like they should email me.
They should email Kishori. Yeah. She manages all these things. So thank you all so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Shukadeva Goswami, Sri Maharaj Parikshit, please empower us to keep hearing and chanting without cessation, no matter what life throws at us, seeing it as your mercy, and find it in your heart to keep us in the flow of the pure transcendental sound vibration, and the Association of Devotees who love to hear and chant your glories. Thank you for considering our request. Anybody who agrees with this, please unmute and say, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha, Patisanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Have
you
a great
so
night.
much.
Keep hearing and
Thank
chanting.
you.
See
Good
you on WhatsApp.
night.
Thank you so
Night.
much. How's you?
Haribol.
Very
Hare
cool.
Bol.
Very bold.